The first thing Rachel did was open my handbag. I noticed it because she did not hesitate. She did not ask. She did not even glance at me for permission. Her hand went straight in, confident, familiar, as if she had practiced the motion before. I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, watching my daughter-in-law pull out my bank cards one by one. "This is for the family budget," Rachel said, already slipping them into her pocket. "The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. My name is Margaret Chen. I am 69 years old. I buried my husband 8 years ago, raised my son alone after that, and learned to live carefully, quietly, without leaning on anyone. I did not gasp. I did not protest. I looked instead at my son. David stood by the counter, arms loosely crossed, his expression unreadable. Not surprised, not confused, calm, almost bored. "David," I said, keeping my voice even. He exhaled through his nose. "Mom, don't make this awkward." That was when I understood it. This wasn't impulsive. Rachel knew exactly where the cards were tucked. Which pocket? Which slot? She did not rummage blindly. She went straight to them, like someone retrieving her own belongings. I felt something settle inside my chest. Not panic, not anger, recognition. Rachel smiled thin and controlled. "We'll keep track of everything. It's easier this way." Easier for whom? She did not say. I waited for David to correct her, to laugh it off, to hand the cards back and tell her she had crossed a line. He did none of those things. He avoided my eyes, staring instead at the floor, as if silence could smooth this over. I realized then that this moment had been rehearsed long before today. The suggestions, the comments about consolidation, the quiet pressure disguised as concern. I nodded once. "All right," I said. Rachel's shoulders relaxed, satisfied. David looked relieved. No one noticed me glance at the clock. 20 minutes had just started ticking. I waited. Not dramatically, not with my breath held. I waited the way a mother does when she still believes there is a sentence her child will speak that makes things right. "David," I said again. Softer this time. He shifted his weight and rubbed his forehead. "Mom, Rachel's just trying to organize things." "Organize my bank cards," I said. Rachel let out a short laugh. "Margaret, you make it sound like I'm stealing." "You took them," I replied without asking. David's eyes flicked to hers, then back to me. "You're reading too much into this." The words landed heavier than I expected. "I earned that money," I said. "Your father and I know." He cut in quick and impatient. "But you're not using all of it. And Rachel is better with details." Better with details. That was the phrase. Rachel crossed her arms, satisfied. "We're family," she said. "There shouldn't be secrets." I looked at my son. "Did you tell her where I keep them?" He hesitated just long enough to answer the question without saying the truth. It came up. Something hollow opened behind my ribs. "So this was discussed," I said. David sighed. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." I nodded slowly. "And you're making it smaller than it is." He didn't respond. He didn't step forward. He didn't ask Rachel to hand the cards back. He stood there silent, as if neutrality were the same thing as fairness. That was the moment my role changed. Not because Rachel took my cards, but because my son allowed it. Because he chose comfort over conflict and called it reason. Because he looked at his wife and saw a future he didn't want to upset. Then looked at me and saw someone who would adjust. I felt it. Then the quiet removal, the way my authority drained out of the room without anyone announcing it. Rachel checked her phone. "We'll go over the accounts later," she said to David, already planning. He nodded. "Yeah, later." No one asked me. No one. I folded my hands again, just as I had before, and kept my voice steady. "I'm going to sit for a bit." "Of course," David said, distracted. I watched him turn away, and with that movement, something settled into place inside me. I stopped waiting for him to protect me. I started counting time instead. When I let my mind go still, the pieces lined up without effort. There was a charge I didn't recognize last spring. I said, mostly to myself. Rachel glanced up from her phone. Oh, that happens all the time. Banks are sloppy. David nodded. You probably forgot it, Mom. I hadn't forgotten. It was a small amount, just enough to doubt myself. I remembered standing in my kitchen that night telling myself not to be dramatic. And the month after that, I continued. There were 2 transfers I didn't authorize. Rachel smiled. The polite one she used when correcting someone. That's why consolidation helps. 1 account. Fewer mistakes. Mistakes, I repeated. David stepped closer, lowering his voice as if we were conspiring. You've got too many moving parts. It stresses you out. It doesn't, I said. He shrugged. It does us. Rachel slid into the space beside him. We're just thinking long-term, simplifying, making things easier for everyone. That phrase had followed me for months. At dinner, in text messages, in passing comments dressed up as concern, easier for everyone, as if my life were a cluttered drawer that needed reorganizing. I remember you asking about my statements, I said to David. How often I check them? He avoided my eyes. I was curious. And my passwords, I added. Rachel laughed softly. We were joking. But I remembered the way she watched my hands when I typed. The way she corrected me when I misspoke about balances. The confidence with which she used words like access and oversight. I had called my bank after the second irregularity, not to accuse, just to ask questions. The woman on the line spoke calmly, professionally. She suggested alerts. Extra verification. A simple precaution. I agreed quietly. Did you ever tell me you set alerts? David asked, now uneasy. No, I said. I didn't think it mattered. Rachel tilted her head. Alerts for what? For anything that isn't me, I said. Silence followed, thin and tight. David cleared his throat. You didn't think to mention that? I didn't think anyone close to me would need to know, I said. Rachel's smile faltered for the first time. Well, transparency goes both ways. I met her eyes. It does. Nothing else needed saying. The clarity settled. Clean and cold. This morning wasn't a beginning. It was a continuation, and instinct, it turned out, had been doing its job long before I trusted it. I didn't say anything right away. That surprised them. Rachel waited for a reaction, her posture alert. As if she expected resistance, she could swat down. David lingered near the doorway, tense, prepared to step in if voices rose. They had rehearsed this part, too. They just hadn't planned for quiet. I used to think generosity meant giving until it hurt, I said at last. Your father believed that. David's expression softened for a moment. Dad was different. I agreed. He gave freely, but he also knew when to stop. Rachel folded her arms. This isn't about stopping. It's about efficiency. Efficiency. Another careful word. Clean, practical, bloodless. When I was your age, I said, I worked 2 jobs and raised a child while watching every cent. Not because I had to, but because I wanted control over my own life. David shifted. No one's taking control. I met his eyes. Then, why does it feel like permission was granted without me? Rachel stepped in quickly. Margaret, no one is questioning your independence. You are reorganizing it, I said. Her lips pressed together. We're trying to help. I know, I said, and meant something different than she heard. Age has a way of sanding down the need to win arguments. It teaches you that volume is rarely the same thing as authority. I had learned that lesson slowly, through years of choosing peace over pride, of smoothing conflict so other people could remain comfortable. That instinct rose now, and I let it pass. I don't need to decide anything today, I said. David exhaled, relieved. Good. That's all we're saying. Rachel nodded. We can talk later. Later meant when I was tired, when the moment had softened, when resistance looked unreasonable. I smiled, small and polite. Later is fine. I watched their shoulders drop. The tension drained out of them as they assumed they had succeeded. But something else was happening inside me. Not surrender, not fear, assessment. I had spent decades navigating other people's expectations. I knew the difference between kindness and compliance, and I knew that confrontation in this house would only teach them how to push harder. So I chose to watch instead. And in that choice, the balance began to shift. Rachel slipped her phone into her pocket and reached for her keys. The bank card stayed where she had put them. "I'm going to make a quick call," she said, already moving toward the hallway. David nodded. "I'll be right here." I watched her go without comment. The front door closed softly behind her, the sound too gentle for what it marked. I glanced at the clock on the wall. I noted the time the way I used to note medication schedules in school pickups. Habit precision. David cleared his throat. "You want some coffee?" "No," I said. "I'm fine." He poured himself a cup anyway, hands unsteady enough that a little spilled onto the counter. He wiped it quickly, not looking at me.
"She means well," he said.
"I know what she means," I replied. He took a sip, grimaced. "You could have said something back there." "I could have," I agreed. Silence stretched between us, tight and deliberate. He leaned against the counter, phone in hand, scrolling without reading every few seconds. He glanced toward the hallway, then away again. "You didn't have to agree," he said finally. "I didn't," I said. He frowned. "You said it was fine." I said later was fine. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "That's what I meant." The clock ticked. Each second landed cleanly, unapologetic. David shifted his weight. "This doesn't have to be a big thing." "I know," I said. That seemed to unsettle him more than anger would have. He stared into his coffee, jaw tight, waiting for a reaction I refused to give. The house held its breath. Everything looked ordinary, familiar, safe. I felt the opposite. Something had already been set in motion, whether they believed it or not. Not by me, not by Rachel, but by choices made quietly over time. All I had done was notice when the moment arrived. David's phone buzzed. He checked it, then set it face down.
He still didn't look at me.
I watched the second hand circle the clock face, steady and patient. The minutes passed with a strange calm, the kind that settles just before a storm breaks its own silence. Rachel came back into the room with her phone already in her hand. "It's probably the bank," she said lightly, as if announcing a weather update. "They always overreact." She answered before either of us spoke. "Hello." Her tone shifted almost immediately. The confidence drained first, then the color from her face. "Yes," she said. "This is Rachel Chen." David straightened. "What is it?" She lifted a finger at him, eyes still on the floor. One moment. I could hear the voice on the other end.
"Come."
Professional, unhurried. Rachel's breathing grew shallow. "I'm holding my mother-in-law's cards," she said. She gave them to me. There was a pause. Longer this time. "No, I don't have written permission," Rachel added quickly. "But we're family." David took a step closer. "Rachel." Her hand started to shake. "I don't understand why this is an issue." Another pause. Then Rachel's voice cracked. "Unauthorized possession." She swallowed hard. "No, I didn't make any purchases. I was just—" She stopped listening, nodding too fast. Yes, I can confirm the numbers." David's face went pale. Not confused, not angry, afraid. "Rachel," he said under his breath. She covered the phone. "They're saying the accounts are flagged." "For what?" he asked. She didn't answer him. She turned away, pacing a few steps, then froze. "Recorded activity," she repeated. "Since when?" The silence stretched again, thicker now, pressing in from all sides. "I see," she said finally. "I'll cooperate." She ended the call and stared at the screen as if it had betrayed her. David looked at me then. Really looked. "Mom," he said, voice low, urgent. "What did you do?" I met his eyes calmly. "Nothing today." Rachel spun toward me. "You didn't tell me there were alerts." "I wasn't asked," I said. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at David, searching for reassurance. He had none to give. The room felt different now, smaller, honest. I folded my hands in my lap and remained silent, letting the consequences speak in the language they understood best. David followed me into the small sitting room and closed the door behind us. Not sharply, carefully, like someone afraid of making the wrong sound. Mom, he said, we need to talk. I sat down and waited. He ran a hand through his hair. The bank is treating this like something serious. It is serious, I said. He hesitated. Rachel didn't mean, I'm not interested in what she meant, I replied. Only in what she did. His shoulders sagged. You didn't have to do it this way. I looked at him. I didn't do anything to her. You set things up, he said, not accusing. Searching. I protected myself, I said. That's all. He leaned against the wall, eyes fixed on the floor. You could have told us. I could have, I agreed. But you didn't tell me you were planning to take my cards. He flinched. That's not fair. It's accurate, I said. Silence followed, thick but steady. He lifted his head slowly, as if bracing for something. You always make things sound so calm, he said. It makes it hard to know where you stand. I stand where I always have, I replied. On my own feet. He swallowed. This is going to cause problems. It already has, I said. David's voice dropped. Rachel scared. I was humiliated, I said. No one checked on me. That landed. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes shifted, restless, finally settling on my face. I didn't think you'd actually push back, he admitted. I didn't push, I said. I stopped yielding. The words seemed to register slowly. His expression changed. Not anger, not relief, but something close to awe, as if he were seeing me not as his mother, but as a woman he had misjudged for years. I underestimated you, he said quietly. Yes, I said. You did. I didn't raise my voice.
I didn't need to.
The balance had already shifted, and he felt it now, standing there, unsure of where his authority had gone, or when it had ever truly been his to begin with. They didn't lower their voices. Rachel was the first to break. You knew this could happen, she snapped at David. You knew your mother had alerts. I didn't know she'd actually use them, he shot back. I asked you, Rachel said. I told you to check. David shook his head. You told me to keep things smooth. This isn't smooth. I stayed where I was, just outside the room, close enough to hear every word. Neither of them acknowledged me now. I had become irrelevant to their argument, which told me everything I needed to know. You said she wouldn't do anything, Rachel pressed. You said she'd just complain and move on. David's voice dropped tight with panic. I said she usually does. That hurt more than I expected. Not sharply, dully. So now what? Rachel demanded. They're talking about restrictions, reviews. I could look like a criminal. You took her cards, David said without permission. Her laugh was short and bitter. And you watched me.
He went quiet at that.
I needed you to handle this, Rachel continued. You're her son. I can't fix this, he said. Not without making myself look involved. There it was. The calculation, the distance. Rachel stared at him. So, you're just going to let me take the fall? I'm saying I have to be careful, he replied.
My job.
My reputation. Your reputation? She repeated. I was protecting our future. No, he said, you were protecting control. Silence crashed between them, heavy and exposed. I understood then that what I had mistaken for unity had never been loyalty. It was convenience. As long as things went their way, they stood together. The moment there were consequences, they separated instinctively, each searching for higher ground. Rachel's voice softened, suddenly sharp in a different way. You promised me. David didn't answer. He stepped back, creating space between them. And in that movement, something fractured cleanly. They were no longer a team, just two people deciding how much blame they were willing to carry. I walked away without announcing myself. There was nothing left for me to say. Justice didn't need witnesses when the truth was already doing the work on its own. I packed my bag slowly, not out of hesitation, but intention. David stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching as if he expected me to say something dramatic. I didn't. I folded each item with care, the way I always had. Order has a way of clarifying decisions. Are you really leaving like this? He asked. I'm leaving prepared, I said. He frowned. You don't have to cut us off. I'm not cutting anyone off, I replied. I'm stepping back. That sounds like the same thing. It isn't. He stepped inside. We can talk about boundaries. Set rules. Make this work. I met his eyes. You're offering solutions now because they cost you something. He stiffened. That's not fair. It's accurate, I said. His voice dropped. Rachel's under review. The accounts are restricted. This could get complicated. I know, I said. He waited for sympathy, for reassurance. I offered neither. You always said family looks out for each other, he said. I did, I replied. And I did. He shook his head. This doesn't feel like that. Because you're used to me cushioning the impact, I said. I'm not doing that anymore. Silence followed. He looked smaller somehow. Uncertain in a way I had never seen him. You're punishing us, he said quietly. No, I said. I'm choosing myself. He swallowed. I didn't think you'd actually walk away. I didn't think I would either. I admitted, until I realized how long I'd been standing still. He stepped aside, giving me room to pass. His face was blank now. Not angry, not defensive, just stripped of expectation. As I moved toward the door, I felt something lift inside me. Not triumph, release. I had never been their safety net. I had been their convenience, and convenience, once removed, has a way of revealing how fragile the arrangement always was. I left Scottsdale before sunrise. David stood on the porch, keys in his hand, saying nothing. Rachel stayed inside. She had learned by then that silence did not mean safety. It meant documentation, reviews, and limits that did not bend because someone was upset. You don't have to go like this, David said. Finally, I do, I replied. This is the only way it stays clean. He nodded once. No argument. No apology that would have changed anything. Distance had already settled between us. Not loud or dramatic, just permanent. Rachel called later that week. I did not answer. Her voice came through a message instead tight, controlled, unfamiliar. They're restricting access, she said. Everything needs authorization now, not mine. The bank had placed long-term flags on the accounts she touched. Reviews would continue. Transactions would be slow. Supervised, documented, not punishment, protection, the kind that does not announce itself, but never loosens again. David texted once. Can we talk sometime? I replied with one sentence. I'm well. Please take care of yourself. I moved into a small place near family, friends, paid in full. No shared expectations attached. I changed nothing about how I lived. Only who had access to it. That was the part they never anticipated. Here is what this taught me. And I say it without bitterness. Boundaries do not require permission. Protection is not cruelty. And age does not make a woman smaller. It makes her precise. I did not destroy my son's marriage. I did not humiliate his wife. I did not take revenge the way people expect it to look. I removed the foundation they relied on and let gravity do the rest. That is what I took with me when I left.
My money, yes.
My dignity, absolutely. But more than that, I took my silence and turned it into something solid. If this story resonated with you, may it remind you of quiet strength and earned endings. I am still here. I am still standing. And I finally belong to myself.